Okay. Dear Earthmates, we are visiting Giorgio Silfer. He is a leading intellectual as focusing on Esperanto. Esperanto, the only word I know in Esperanto, which means, I think, I hope. Is that so?
Yes, the person who is hoping.
Yes.
Esperanto is a person who is hoping.
Wonderful. I am an Esperanto then.
Of course.
So are you. How did your journey regarding Esperanto start, by the way?
Oh, well, it was very soon in my life when when I was 14, I think, so 14, 13, 14. Because, you know, when you are a teenager, in fact, you are very fond of languages, and also you imagine that you can invent a language, a secret language maybe. And this is a part of the personality of a teenager, or often, very often, and also it was for me. But on the other hand, if I am a great idealist, I am also a very practical person. I began to invent a language, but I discovered that there is already Esperanto. And so, as my sister-in-law had some books of Esperanto as a grammar and a dictionary, I began to learn it. In fact, I was just a bit disappointed because it is too easy to understand Esperanto. And I hoped to invent a secret language, maybe for a secret diary, a secret book. But, well, then I forgot my project and I began to use Esperanto and to write Esperanto. And then I chose Esperanto as my literary language, or main literary language.
In addition to Italian?
So, in fact, I am a native speaker of the dialect of Milan, because everybody in my family spoke the dialect of Milan. Wow. But I was quite an analphabet in my native tongue till when I was 14. So then I learned how to write Milanese dialect, which is not so simple. It's more difficult than French orthography. And but I was educated in Italian language. So Italian language is my main language of culture and of life. But in fact, on the same level than Esperanto.
Wonderful. Would you kindly say something in Italian and then say something, the same thing in Milan dialect and in Esperanto, please, with English, of course. In English, and then so that I can understand it, please.
Yeah, so Milanese sounds like French language from time to time. Ma quando piove, gutta i tech. This is Milan language. Quando piove, gutta i tech. Quando piove, cadono le gocce. This is Italian language. Se pluvas, gutoi falas. This is Esperanto.
And in English?
If it rains, tears fall.
Oh, if it rains, tears fall. How nice. Wow. Wow. Well, for the Mediterranean people, of course, this is especially understandable. Wow. Would you kindly repeat now? If it rains, the tears fall. Okay, yeah. Tears fall. Now again, please, in Italian, Milan dialect, and Esperanto, please.
In the dialect of Milan, se piove, gute tec. Also, quam piove, gute tec. In Italian language, quando piove, cadono le gocce. In Esperanto, se pluvas, gutoj falas.
Wow, so exciting. So exciting.
You see, falas is like to fall.
Oh, yes.
But gutoi and se and pluvas, they are more Latin roots.
I see. I love Latin, by the way. I spent a little bit time on that. And you have been active in the Esperanto PEN Centre. You have been the president. And recently you were in Africa. Now you're in
Budapest.
Budapest, another lovely.
Yeah, and 2 days ago I was closely near to the frontier of Ukraine.
Yeah, yeah. The tragedy there, it's all, yeah. The tragedy there is suddenly sounded wrong. The tragedy everywhere, actually, it's not there. It's here, everywhere, and directly they are suffering most, of course. But it's so terrible. Where were you in Africa?
I was in Bujumbura, Burundi, because there is not exactly the first, but now the most important Esperanto house in Africa. It is a school with a partnership with another school in Switzerland. And they both are administrated by our consortium, which is a consortium of Esperanta Civito.
Are you based in Switzerland?
In fact, yes. Well, I'm based in 3 places, 4. When I like the sea, I am at the Mediterranean Sea in Malaga, Andalusia. When I want to reach the mountain, I am in Switzerland, in La Chaux-de-Fonds, the main town of watches and clocks. And when I like a great city, I am in Budapest, which is one of the cultural main cities of the Esperanto diaspora. And there is also a 4th place I am in travel.
Wonderful. Budapest is important to me for a few reasons. One of them is the great chess player Judith Polgar, or Judith Polgar, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly.
Who speaks Esperanto?
Really?
The three sisters, they speak Esperanto, and also the parents. The father is, I think the father is the son of the great rabbin of Budapest.
Wow. Are you in contact with them? Have you met them?
Well, I was in contact with them 10, 20 years ago. Now somebody is dead, somebody left, so there is not the same contact that before.
Okay. How about literature? You're a writer, and your passion for words, for languages, and naturally literature. How did that evolve, appear?
Well, I began chiefly. Is somebody who speaks up? Just a moment, please, because I am here in another office. Very well, with my assistant. Very well. So I began, in fact, as a poet, but the main domain for my literature writings are theater. I'm a playwright, in fact, and I can say that I am the most important in Esperanto. When I write about situation which are in connection with the Esperanto people, with the life of Esperantists, and in fact, we are like a microcosmos inside a macrocosmos in this case. It's very interesting because, in fact, it is something never explored before. In fact, here in Budapest, I wrote the most important of my comedies, The Family of Antosperi, which is the family of parents and two daughters who speak in Esperanto and live in a special situation, the moment of the changement in the beginning of the 90 years of last century.
I recall our conversations in Turkey and elsewhere. Tolstoy was interested in Esperanto, and one of his articles was published, I think you said that, in a magazine in Esperanto, and it was prohibited in Russia at that time. That's what I remember. Am I wrong? Or...
Yeah, in fact, you know, during the first wave of propagation of Esperanto, Zamenhof sent the first grammar to three categories of people: Jews, frères maçons, and important people. Among the important people, just one answered, and answered with a great enthusiasm, to Zamenhof. He was Lev Tolstoy.
Wow.
So Lev Tolstoy learned Esperanto. He had a secretary who came from France, Victor Lebrun, and with him he spoke in Esperanto also. In fact, Tolstoy is important also in the history of Esperanto theater, because a piece of Tolstoy, it is the first vodka maker, I translate, so I'm not sure in English, was prohibited in Russia, but it was represented as a samizdat theater in Esperanto at the end of September of 1896 in Smolensk. And it was the first presentation in Esperanto, in fact. The article, which was in the review La Esperantisto, it was in this moment, we are in 1895. It was the most important magazine in Esperanto and German and French, in 3 languages. It was against a certain situation in Russia, and for this, the Russian authorities decided that the magazine could not come into Russian Empire, and as three readers over four, so 3/4 of the market of this magazine were in Russia, it meant the end, the death of this magazine. In fact, Tolstoy wrote to the authorities, and in fact, the authorities cancelled the prohibition, but it was too late in this moment. So it was the end of the first period, the first time of the history of our language, which is named the Russian time. And then came the French time, the time of Belle Époque, when Paris was Paris also for the Esperanto diaspora.
Wow. I have written a play about Tolstoy and Tolstoya, but I had not included this important piece of information regarding his Esperanto, aspect. So I will include this now. Thank you so much into the play.
Of course.
How exciting! Of course. What do you think about the overall situation in our world today? And is Esperanto also related to Esperanto and not related? Whatever you wish to express when you look at the big picture.
Well, you see, it is a tragic situation for many reasons, chiefly for me. First reason, we are in a special part of the world here because this part of Europe is very specific. If you see a language map of Europe, you see that in Western countries, the Western part, you have some great zones of color. You have the blue for French language, the violet for English, the yellow for German, the green for Italian, and so on. And you have another great area with one color, which is the area of Russian language. Between Western countries with some great languages, we have also minority languages in Western countries, but in fact there is a situation more homogeneous. And the other side, where is the great area of Russian language, you have a mosaic of colors, because you have a lot of small peoples, small nations or middle nations between Germany and Russia. And also you have diasporas, you have peoples without state. There was the great diaspora of Jews. There is today still the great diaspora of gypsies, and so on. You understand that if in the part of Russia, Russian language could be enough, and in Western countries, if you speak French, German, maybe also English, you can go everywhere, so and so, but the place of the language problem and the problem of communication is exactly in this area where Warsaw the main town of Poland, is the geographic middle, central point of Europe. And in Warsaw, Esperanto is born. So this is a place where Esperanto is born. And in another place, it could not be, because this is a place where it is more necessary. I am in Hungary, for instance. With Hungarian people, nobody can speak, because the Hungarian language is similar to no other languages. If an Hungarian wants to speak to a foreigner, he must learn the language of the foreigner, or a foreign language. So when you live in a language island, you see this problem of communication, the importance of living in a minority language, even if this minority language is a language of great culture, And so we are here where Esperanto is born. We are here, in fact, when I write something, I write a piece in theater. Often the situation is located near the Danube River in any place in Europe. This is the situation. And so you understand that for me is like the war is in my
homeland, in a way.
Language homeland. So
yes.
This is first. Second tragedy. The second tragedy is, you know, when you speak a language, you adopt also an attitude to understand the world, to see the world. You have a certain perception of the world. And in fact, the perception of Esperanto is a perception of unity of the humanity. And this is because Esperanto is not so spread, because the humanity is not united at all today. It's a long way till the united of the humanity, till understand that you are on the same right level, and so on. And in fact, in this century, we understand that we have a long way to do, a long way to make. And in fact, I am disappointed, but I go on.
Yes. The fact you mentioned regarding the cultural milieu of the birth of Esperanto, that should be included in any sociolinguistic book. I think it's a good example. And for our earthmates, I would like to mention that we have a common project. A few years ago, I wrote the libretto, A Dancer in Danger, a dancer trying to migrate from a war zone, and you kindly translated parts of it into Esperanto. So it will be in Esperanto and English, and hopefully we'll find a good composer, and soon it's unfortunately not out of date. Unfortunately, still, as long as there are wars, it will be on the agenda. How about China? Esperanto, to what extent does Esperanto exist in China? I have no idea.
Well, you see, there is an important tradition in China, because in fact, we must go till the years before the First World War, when there was a First Republic. The First Republic of China, the First Revolution, many revolutionaries were also Esperantists. And Esperanto was introduced in schools in China.
Wow.
We are in 1912. We have some great pages in this moment. For instance, Eroshenko, which is a great poet in Esperanto and also in other languages, Slavonic languages, who was in Japan before and then in China. He was one of the protagonists of this period, where also there was a great influence of anarchist people. So there was a moment interesting, and this situation continued during the years between the two wars, the two world wars, till the Civil War, and also Mao Zedong, because Mao Zedong wrote in his book also that if you take Esperanto as a possibility to propagation of the idea of the revolution, we have to learn Esperanto, and it is possible to learn Esperanto.
Oh, I
so,
didn't know either.
According to this position of Mao, Esperanto was one of the languages which had every books of Mao Zedong, every writings in Mao Zedong.
Wow.
70 books we are in Esperanto of Mao Zedong. And this situation continues till nowadays. So we have a part of Esperanto diaspora in China, so in not only in the continent, but also in Taiwan, in fact. So it's an important part of our diaspora. And in fact, the authorities also used Esperanto as other languages for the propagation and the propaganda of the regime, of course. It is difficult to understand, in fact, if you don't know the situation inside. China is a great phenomenon. If you have a peasant, and the peasant speak with you, of course, he is very nice, but if you touch a clave, there you see that there is, behind him, there are 10,000 years of civilization, of history. So it's quite interesting phenomenon.
Exactly. One of the Chinese leaders, when he was asked what his opinion was about the French Revolution, he said it's too new to make a judgment, to make a comment. Too recent.
Yeah. They don't calculate by kings, they calculate by dynasties.
Yes. Then maybe Argentina is also because of the, I don't know, something, Argentina is also, may also be close to Esperanto for some reason.
Well, listen, in America and chiefly in South America, the most important country for the Esperanto diaspora is Brazil.
Brazil.
And Brazil also for a specific reason. The person who introduced Spiritism into Brazil was an Esperanto speaker.
Wow.
Came from Czechoslovakia.
Aha.
Valdomir Lorenz is the name. And he used Esperanto, in fact, and every Spiritist in Brazil knows about Esperanto. And in fact, maybe 40%, yes, of the Esperanto community in Brazil consists of Spiritists. So for this fact, Brazil is the most important in Southern America.
India?
Yeah, it's very interesting for India. You know, in India, there was a great pioneer of Esperanto who was an officer of the British Army. His name was Colonel Pollen. Edmond Privat, another pioneer of Esperanto, but from Geneva in Switzerland, of course, not Geneva in Illinois, Geneva in Switzerland. He was the Swiss friend of Mahatma Gandhi, friend and interpreter, because he was a three-language man, French, Esperanto, and English. And at a certain point, Privat asked to Gandhi, haven't you never seen, never known Colonel Pollen? Oh, yes, of course. He arrested me many times. And I was always very glad to be arrested from him, by him, because he was so nice person. But in fact, the position of Esperanto in the culture of India, which is also a great phenomenon in India, passes through Rabindranath Tagore. Is Rabindranath Tagore and then Gandhi, the personality like Tolstoy. You find always the same kind of people, in fact, which are the most important for the history of the culture in the country, the literature, Rabindranath Tagore, Tolstoy. They are milestones in the history of literature in Russian language and so on. But in fact, they are in the minority in the development of the society and the history then. And Esperanto, in this case, stay with this minority. We are glad of this, of course. It's better to be with Tolstoy and Gandhi than with others.
Yes, yes, I agree. There is this Earth Civilization Network, and which is relatively new, and only a handful of Earthmates are. It's a group of concerned people with various backgrounds, diversity from various ages and professions, in the spirit of Esperanto, in a way, aiming a global community, and you'll be always most welcome to. We have monthly gatherings.
Thank you.
And it's important who to trust, to choose the people you can trust. People may have different opinions naturally, but as long as you are sure that that person is sincere and doing, this is vital when, isn't it, when there's so much misinformation, etc. around. It's great to have good friends from various places, and you're one of the supreme examples of world citizen with your life and works. And one of your works is about the history of Esperanto, which you showed me, isn't it? And I would love to.
I have here.
Wonderful. Yes, please.
A great.
Yes. Yes. And your sound, your voice, sorry, the voice has just gone. The microphone probably fell or something. Yes.
My book is so heavy that it destroyed the microphone, but I arranged it. So this is a 700 pages book about the history of the original literature in Esperanto. Fortunately, luckily, I have also this small, very small book, which is an epitome, we can say, Breve Historia Cultural de la Comunidad Esperantófona. I wrote it in Spanish language because, in fact, I was also an Hispanist in my life. And I was teacher of Spanish language. And in fact, I'm very fond of comparative literatures and cultural history. And in Esperanto, you have, in fact, very interesting things, because you can have a trip through the history in another path, in another way.
Yes, exactly. We have a technological limit, unfortunately, but before we put a comma, what do you recommend, what do you suggest to earthmates, to especially youngsters maybe?
Please, can you repeat the question?
What would you recommend or suggest to youngsters in our world, on our planet?
I see. Well, the first thing is that I recommend to have a good relationship with other people, not to become an hikikimoro, to close yourself in your room. It is a phenomenon not only in Japan, but in many countries. And maybe the three more important virtues of the Esperanto culture, the hope, but also to be obstinate and to be patient. We must be obstinate, we must be patient. Only with this we can go on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, dear Giorgio Silfer.
You're welcome.
We're together. That's how I enjoy ending some conversation or whatever. I don't want
to.
We're together.
See you again. See
Yes.
you again. Thank you very much for your invitation.
Thank you. Delighted. I'm glad. Thank you so much.